and welcome. The first 5 issues of the Event Leviathan miniseries can be summed up in one sentence. A group of people stand around talking about what they don't know. The concluding issue is the big reveal of what they didn't know. The inciting incident of Event Leviathan is all the covert organizations of the DC universe being attacked and destroyed simultaneously, none of which is actually seen in the first issue of the miniseries. We are only given the aftermath. This will be a recurring motif. The team that organizes to solve this alleged whodunit is made up of Batman, his son Damian, Green Arrow, Plastic Man, the Modern Manhunter, The Question, and Lois Lane. It's an unusual but slightly interesting selection of people to tackle the mystery at hand. Although, quite honestly, it does seem like the only 2 members that matter are Batman and Lois Lane. Everyone else has their role, but they could be any other DC character, and it really wouldn't change the dynamic that much. It should be pointed out that this group of detectives, so to speak, all gather off-panel at some point between the first and second issue. There are more than a few relevant developments, such as the capture of Batgirl, that are not shown. They happen outside of the main story. The general focus of the miniseries is the scenes between the action, with the assembled team deconstructing events the audience hasn't witnessed. In a very accidental manner, it's quite a postmodern take on an action-oriented story. The mystery being discussed ad infinitum is, who is Leviathan? The secondary question is, what is his agenda, and what will happen next? As a mystery story, it's unsatisfying. If there are breadcrumbs sprinkled around to indicate Leviathan's true identity, they're so subtle that they're imperceptible. So the ability for the reader to actively participate in the story is functionally non-existent. All one can do is wildly speculate. For the most part, there is a lot of verbal navel-gazing. The team doesn't really pursue any sort of investigation other than accosting a few individuals who are clearly not Leviathan. In the end, they find out nothing of substance. As a reading experience, it's somewhat frustrating as all the story movement is sideways rather than progressing forward. Certainly, there are some action sequences. Most, if not all, are flashbacks. It's an interesting stylistic choice, to a degree. At the same time, it alters the organic flow of the story. An action sequence will be initiated as a cliffhanger for an issue. Then, at the beginning of the next issue, the action sequence is already resolved and the team is discussing what happened. As a reader, until the story flashes back to address the prior issue's cliffhanger, it feels like one has either missed an issue or accidentally skipped over a few pages. Furthermore, starting an action sequence, then cutting to a point where the sequence is already resolved, removes any tension that sequence could provide. Again, stylistically interesting, but at the same time, it resets the flow of the story. Event Leviathan has the feel of a typical Marvel event. This translates into a dramatic change in the status quo, which then leads to a vague, slightly meaningless resolution that is intended to be explored over the next year or so in a variety of related titles. While one can't argue that allowing for more stories is a bad thing, especially in a serialized medium, it is a reasonably terrible approach to a limited series. Certainly there is a beginning, middle, and end, but the sense of closure is non-existent, which in my opinion is a very necessary element in a miniseries, a definitive, satisfying conclusion. The only definitive conclusion in Event Leviathan is the identity of Leviathan, which, in comparison to the destruction he's created, is inconsequential. Anticipating and preventing the forthcoming chaos is a more proactive measure than figuring out the identity of the person behind the mask. At best, the identity is a tangential clue to motivation, not prevention. Now, the irrelevancy of Leviathan's true identity needed to be pointed out, because Leviathan's overall goal seems to be neutered when Lois Lane publicly reveals his identity. Logically, and within this context, this makes no sense whatsoever. Overall, Leviathan destroyed all the covert agencies and stole their data so he could reveal these secrets to the world. Somehow, all of this information being in the wild would create a chain of events that would magically solve all of the world's problems. Presumably. It's never clear how this would actually solve anything. The point being, knowing who Leviathan is doesn't negate the information he may reveal. One reveal doesn't trump another reveal, especially since Leviathan's identity is irrelevant in comparison to the chaos he could create by releasing the information he's accumulated. In the end, one could concede there is some sense of a conclusion. Leviathan is revealed, and his ambiguous plot is foiled. However, it is unsatisfying on a basic story level. Furthermore, it's an obvious launching pad to a planned series of events to follow. In other words, this is merely chapter 1 of a story that may evolve over a significant amount of time. For a continuing series, this would be expected. But this is a problematic approach to a miniseries that should have a feeling of completeness to it, which this does not. That's it for today. Like, share, subscribe, and comment, and I will talk at you later. Until next time.